Hey guys, welcome to the 40 Finance channel. Congrats to all of the NVIDIA stockholders out there. Over the past several months, this stock has been on absolute fire. And it's been one of the key reasons that the QQQ is up in my portfolio this year as well. But we're starting to enter a time period or a valuation period for NVIDIA where the fundamental valuation is absolutely insane. And there's tons of chatter around the market about, NVIDIA being extremely expensive. Is there any more room to run? So I thought I'd just review some of the metrics that I look at and share my opinion on NVIDIA stock here right now. They do have an earnings call coming up on May 24th. And this run up into earnings makes for sort of a nail-biting situation if you're a stockholder, because there's just so much momentum priced in that if there's any hint of negativity in that earnings call, then most people feel like NVIDIA is going to crash. Now, what does crash mean? That could be 20%. That I think that would probably be on the high end. As always, we'll be using SeekingAlpha Premium for all of our data points today. This is a stock research platform I use all the time here on this channel. If you're interested in learning more and potentially supporting my channel as well, my affiliate link is in the description, gets you the best price on a 1-year subscription to SeekingAlpha Premium. You also get a free trial on the front end, so definitely check that out. Now, as I was saying, if you were a year-to-date stockholder, if you bought NVIDIA on the very first trading day of the year, you're up a whopping 100%. This is a mega cap stock, okay? This isn't a penny stock going up 100%. This is a huge stock with $773 billion of market cap. 100% move is extremely impressive. And even if you purchased NVIDIA in the height of the market enthusiasm, that roughly came to an end around November of 2021, the price back then, just kind of hovering over here, was around it looks like 326 was the approximate high just after Thanksgiving in 2021. And we all know what happened to the market after that. So if you got in at 320, if your bad luck meant that you bought all your NVIDIA shares on November of 2021, you're not quite whole yet, but you gotta feel pretty darn good about where you stand, certainly with what we've seen on the market. So if you're in that camp, you've got to have your finger on the sell button, at least thinking about, should I just get my money back on this roller coaster ride that I've been on? Well, if you're talking strictly fundamental analysis, as we look at the SeekingAlpha valuation metrics here, you can see that on their letter grade system, they've given NVIDIA an F, but let's talk about what that really means, right? And one of the things that I do like with SeekingAlpha is not just the numbers that come out, but the potential to compare the numbers immediately from a valuation standpoint, both to the sector and 5-year average. And the reason I like something like the 5-year average for NVIDIA is it's just a very unique stock. It often trades inside its own range. It has its own sort of premium multiple that's been going on for several years now. So if you're just going to compare it to semiconductors across the board, yes, it's going to look extremely overpriced. But what about NVIDIA versus NVIDIA, right? We've had enough history with this one. If you're going to go back to 2018, 2019, when this latest chip revolution sort of took over, where does it stand today? So for me anyway, I'm always looking ahead. Right, I don't care too much about trailing 12-month metrics. I want to see, based on projections, where are things looking in the future? And NVIDIA always reports a non-GAAP, and all these metrics are going to take into account projections. So in their analyst projections, you can love them, you can hate them, but that's what we have right now to work with from a projection basis. And if you take the consensus PE non-GAAP forward, NVIDIA is at 68.85. Now, from a 5-year average, they were 43.21. But you're 59% higher on price to earnings ratio looking ahead than you are to the 5-year average. So that's one metric. Then if we go down and let's just take PEG ratio, price to earnings growth forward, so looking ahead, 2.28. If we go back, 5-year average, 2.31. So that's only, it's actually 1% under what they've done in the past. So interesting there. If we want to go to sales and we want to look ahead to forward, 25.7 versus an average, 5-year average of 15.3, 67% higher on price to sales. Now, what about cash flow? A lot of people talk about cash flow. Price to cash flow looking ahead, 68 times. 5-year average is 43 times. Now, what is one thing that we know about stocks that get overpriced? It's oftentimes because their growth rate is much higher than their peers or in their industry, right? So valuations can skyrocket if a company is offering premium growth rates that you don't see in other stocks. So typically, what I would say, just as an eyeball metric, if your PE ratio is running 59% higher, you should be offering about a 50% higher clip in your growth rate, right? Whether at the bottom line or top line. So let's see how that looks for NVIDIA right now. And if you scroll down the growth tab, same thing, we're looking forward, right? We don't want to look behind, we're looking forward because that's where all this momentum is coming from. NVIDIA, hopefully back to double digits on the revenue line, looking ahead, plus 12% is the projection right now. 5-year average, though, plus 22%. Now, they are beating the sector median, if you want to go back to that metric, but it is by 20%, and we know that the valuation is much higher than that. So at least on revenue, I would say it doesn't align with this latest multiple. If we look at EPS growth, so going down here to EPS diluted growth forward, you're getting into double digits again, 11.62%. The 5-year average, though, is 26.69%. So they're 56 percentage points off of this same EPS growth that they've done over the past 5 years, and yet the valuation is much higher. So this is definitely a concern, at least on the first two metrics. What about the cash flow, right, that we talked about? Free cash flow per share growth rate plus 20% projected forward, and the 5-year average plus 29%. So they're coming in lower, but not as far off as some of the other metrics that we've seen. But it's just really interesting, and it's hard to articulate fundamentally, make a case for NVIDIA when we see multiples exceeding the 5-year average, and yet the growth metrics are below the 5-year average. It's kind of a classic mix of an overvalued stock. All right, so not a lot in there if you want to justify NVIDIA's price using core fundamentals, but what if you just compared it to some of the other companies in the market, right? So I just put this together here on SeekingAlpha, NVIDIA versus TSM versus AMD versus Intel. All right, so the closest comparison, in my opinion, is going to be AMD here. TSM is a manufacturer. It's a little different ballgame because Intel sells at retail prices. These guys are selling at wholesale prices. But let's take a look at these same valuation metrics across these peers. And we're going to focus, this is basically a forward metric, right? Fiscal year 1 looking out. You got NVIDIA at 68.85, TSM under 20, AMD under 40, Intel surprisingly at 71. Now Intel's a totally different story. Okay, they are lagging the market. They are digging out of a ditch. Now, what if we go down to our growth rates, compare across the industry? So revenue growth forward, NVIDIA double digits plus 12%. TSM, almost 15%. AMD, 18%. So these are all projections, of course. And then Intel, is actually minus 8% projected for next year. How about earnings? So if we go EPS growth, 11% for NVIDIA, 15% for TSM, 13% for AMD, and then negative for Intel. What about profitability? Because we do hear a lot about margins these days. I feel like it doesn't take much of anything to knock a stock down despite a good earnings report. What about margins? If we look at gross, how about net income margin? 16% for NVIDIA, 44% for TSM, and AMD 1.71. So NVIDIA is definitely beating AMD in that category, although they trail TSM, which again, they sell wholesale, so a little bit different game. Okay, so bottom line, what's my opinion on NVIDIA? Well, it's just hard to overlook what the numbers are saying, and there's certainly no way I personally would buy this stock today prior to the earnings that are coming up on May 24th. Now, that certainly doesn't mean that NVIDIA is a bad stock. It might just be overpriced right now. And if you project 5 years from now, with the way AI is changing so quickly and NVIDIA being in the middle of that whole conversation, you certainly have to like their chances to make more money tomorrow than they're making today. But I think for myself, if I was one of the people who purchased at that high price of $319, $320, something like that, back in November of 2021, and I was struggling to get my money back over these past 15 months, I would probably sell just to break out whole and then wait for the price to come down, perhaps to start a new position. Now, on another view here, what if I had purchased NVIDIA on January 3rd for $143? Would I sell today at $313? Well, it's just really hard to argue 100% gains. Most people are not going to book 100% gains in the stock market throughout their lifetime. So you'd have to consider cashing out here as well. Now, what if you're a real long-time holder and you bought this one in, say, whatever, December of 2019 before COVID for $56 or so? 5-year run has been plus 400. If I had a cost basis of $50, $60, honestly, I'd probably just continue to let it ride. And I think it's well within reason that even a dip down for NVIDIA is still going to leave you with plus 200, 300% gains at this point. So assuming I didn't need the money, if I had that low of a cost basis, it just feels like money in the bank, and it might come down if earnings are poor. But on the same token, you're so far ahead, you might as well just keep rolling unless you really need the money. All right, guys, let me know what you think about NVIDIA stock right now in terms of price to valuation. Are you holding? Are you buying? What's going on in your opinion with NVIDIA? But before you go, don't forget to check out that Seeking Alpha special offer. Link in the description. Hope everybody's doing well. We'll see you on the next video.